All right, John. Well, big news today.
Big news. How big?
Big, big, big news.
Bigly news? Hugely news?
It is, yes, it is bigly. That is a real word, by the way. But
Well,
Andy Dalton is out as the starting quarterback. Do you
just
believe it?
wow. I, I
I'm shocked.
I'm still processing it. It's been about an hour and a half or so,
Yeah,
but like, do you remember last time something like this happened?
no.
No,
Marvin Lewis? Marvin Lewis?
it was before Marvin Lewis. It was actually Dick LeBeau benching Gus. I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. Like Farad.
Farad. Yeah, Farad. Yeah.
He benched Gus Farad for John Kidna in Week 3 of 2002. 17 years, 5 weeks later, we have something like this happen again. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, so Andy Dalton was always good enough for us to say, well, he had his moments. He's a solid veteran, you know. But we all knew it was time because he couldn't elevate the team, and with all the problems going on this year, we really, we couldn't even see Zach Taylor's offense functioning properly. We couldn't. I mean, a lot of people talk about the offensive line. It's not as bad as they say. The offensive line pass blocking is actually not that bad, but
Mhm.
the flaws are highlighted with a guy like Andy Dalton. And that is what Brian Finley brings. Is he brings that ability to navigate the pocket, to buy some time, and to step up and make plays. Yes, he's not going to fire off rockets 50 yards down the field, but maybe we see Jake Dolgala do that a little bit later. I mean, it's just so exciting, the possibilities.
The possible like a rotation between Finley and Dolegala, depending on what they
No, I'm
what
saying we can try out Finley 2-3 weeks. He fails, we go Dolgala. I mean, and then we draft someone. I mean, this is how it
yeah,
works. You
yeah.
you try things until you find something that works.
I'll say this. I think you said it very clear, very eloquently, and very clearly about what the issues were. People will point at no quarterback can function behind this offensive line. I saw a tweet today saying even Aaron Rodgers could do it, and it was basically getting to a point where we just didn't know what we were talking about. Right, we're just throwing crap against the wall and hoping that it would stick. Here's the fact of the matter. The first 4 weeks of the season, Dalton had an unpressured dropback rate of 65.8%, which ranked 16th in the league. So in terms of keeping him clean, the Bengals offensive line was doing about an average job. Inputting the next 4 games, weeks 5 through 8, that percentage went up to 68.6%, which ranks 10th in the league. So over the last 4 weeks, since that disaster in Pittsburgh when they gave up 8 sacks, Dalton has been relatively kept clean compared to the rest of the league. But the production itself on a per play basis has not improved as much as the improvement in pass protection. He's still one of the 4 worst quarterbacks in adjusted yards per attempt in the clean pocket. He's still one of the 5 worst quarterbacks in completion percentage above expectation. He's still in the bottom of the league in total QBR, expected points per play, and his PFF grade, which takes account of every single play and weighting it all against the defense, it's still in the bottom of the league. So even when the protection has been fine, even when things haven't been going completely AWOL, despite a bad running game, despite injuries to the receiving core, Andy Dalton has just not been enough. And I think that's the most important thing here. We, and I say we as in Zach Taylor and the Bengals organization, needs to see what this roster is, what the direction they need to go through beyond 2019. They need to see how the entire roster is functional at this point. And we talked about it on the last time we were on the show. They need the quarterback that can give them the best chance at evaluating the rest of the roster. And I said it wasn't Andy Dalton. And I'm not the biggest Ryan Finley supporter. I'm not a stan of him. I didn't think he was that good of a quarterback coming out of college. But if he's the guy that can at least have the offense functioning at some type of consistent rate where you get a proper evaluation of Auden Tate and Alex Erickson and CJ Uzoma and Drew Sample, and he's just the guy that keeps your offense on float, not necessarily to win games and pop off a 6-game winning streak or whatever, but just to see what you have on offense. Because right now, Andy Dalton's play has been so erratic, so inconsistent, and not only has his play not been putting them in positions to win games, but just not to let the offense function at the rate that you want to see. And like you said, we haven't really seen the good parts of whatever offense Zach Taylor is bringing from Los Angeles because it doesn't work with a bad quarterback. It doesn't work with quarterbacks who play bad, and that's exactly the problem with Andy Dalton. And it's nothing personal, but it was just time to see what else that they have there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the running game. I mean, really, if you can if you can keep the running game, if you keep the passing game, keep the sticks moving, there is a better chance the running game will pick up too. And really, the running game is as bad as it possibly gets.
Well, it's no surprise if you have one of the worst quarterbacks in passing games in the NFL like that. Like, people are still stuck in the notion that the run game sets up the pass game, when it's really the opposite. If the opposing defenses don't respect your quarterback throwing it down deep, they're not going to be they're not necessarily going to put more people in the box, but they're not going to respect the play action when it's used, or respect the quarterback at all in terms of the flow of that offense. If you can't throw the ball consistently, you're not going to have a chance to run the ball consistently if you don't have the blockers to do that. The problems with the offensive line are more amplified when looking at the run game, because the offensive line can produce a better run game, but it can't produce a better passing game. Pressures and sacks of that nature, they're mainly responsible for the quarterback. It's not necessarily all on the offensive line in that matter. And that's kind of why Andy Dalton's pressure rate hasn't been as high, because he's able to get the ball out quickly. He's able to nullify some bad reps from the offensive line, but he's also taking a lot of sacks because when he isn't able to get rid of the ball pretty quickly, he doesn't do well, out of structure, doesn't do well on his own, out of the pocket, and creating plays on his own. That's why it leads to a lot of sacks and a lot of hits in that nature. And that does make the offensive line look bad in itself. But the offensive line problems are mainly predicated towards the running game, and that they're just getting no help from the passing game because they just can't move the ball consistently through the air. And you can't expect, without proper personnel up front, to have your offense being carried by a running game. It's just not going to work, even when you have someone like Joe Mixon leading it.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even you get the running game going, the defense is off the field more. I mean, you can actually, like, we had some promising defensive players, Jesse Bates and other guys, and they just kind of, it just seems like the inability to sustain drives is just hurting the entire franchise right now.
That was the problem early in the season too. I think in the Buffalo game, I think was the first time we saw like the defense pretty much play well throughout that game, and then towards the end they just kind of collapsed, and it was because they're on the field for 38 minutes in the game because the offense kept going 3-and-out, and they did better in the second half of the game, but it just wasn't enough. And eventually the Bills just kind of had their way against the defense because it was gasping for air. They were just out there for so long, and that's been the case for most of the losses that we've seen this year. The offense goes 3-and-out consistently throughout the first half, and then the defense does its best to try to hold up for as long as possible, but eventually when you get to that point where you're just out there for 80 plays a game, you're going to break down. And I know the defense isn't that talented, and they have severe schematic problems and personnel issues, specifically with the linebackers, but they're just not being given a chance right now. And they're not doing so bad in terms of points per game, and some other situational metrics, but they're giving up a lot of yards because they're just out there for a long time. And that's the one thing that people will look in terms of total defense, where you can say the Bengals are 32nd in total defense, but when you look at it a per play basis, like they're doing their absolute best right now. They're pretty much the strength of this team, and they're getting no help from their offense, and that's mainly on the quarterback not doing his job.
Yeah, I mean, so let's think about what Zach Taylor's thinking was. It was all the things that you just said strategically. So it's about evaluating talent. I mean, we're 0-8, so the chances to make the playoffs are about, they're less than 1%. They're very, very low. You'd have to go basically 8-0, maybe 7-1, and then have all these other teams really just be terrible. It's very unlikely. So it's not about winning; it's about evaluating talent. But also, sometimes you just need to prepare the grounds to move on. Like, why drag this out so long when we know we're going to draft a quarterback? We're probably picking top 3 at the worst, and we know there will be at least one of the 2 top prospects of quarterback available, no matter what we do. So it's inevitable. Dalton's in the contract year, and why delay it? Why and maybe we give Dalton a chance. I mean, maybe we can't trade him. Maybe he asks for a release. We do him a favor. He can sign with the team of his choice. We don't know. We don't know what's happening. It is his birthday, so I imagine this was a cut out of kindness. It was a benching of kindness. Not. I'm sure they have some, because they're the Bengals. They're sweethearts when it comes to stuff. So, John, we talked about what this move means for the team right now. What did Dalton mean to this franchise?
A lot. I think you have to look at the context of how he was brought in and when he was brought in, and just look at the big picture. Like, he was drafted in the second round of the draft, and historically, the hit rate for second round quarterbacks is not very high. There's guys like Ken Stabler, Drew Brees, to name a few, that have done really well with the opportunity. But when you look at all time second round quarterbacks, he's probably very clearly in the top 10. So in context, when he was drafted, he was a successful pick for the Bengals. And when they drafted him, they had Carson Palmer still on the roster, but he was basically done with the team, and they ended up trading him 6 weeks into the season, into Andy Dalton's rookie season. There was the lockout for his rookie year too. Didn't really get any work with the team up like the Detroit for that offseason. And that season itself, like, they were expected to win like 2 or 3 games. They ended up winning 9 games, going to the playoffs. And he looked about as good as they could have possibly expected. And to have, you can call him replaceable level all you want, but he had some good years throughout the 9 years. And for a second round quarterback, to get that second contract and to be, considered at a time an above average quarterback with a lot of the good situations around him, it's been a success. Like, in terms of overall picture, yeah, the 0-4 playoff record for him specifically stinks. The fact that he never stepped up in crucial moments, or at least not as many as they wanted to, it stinks. But I think for what they could have expected Dalton to become and what he has become, this should be considered a success. And specifically with how that franchise was at the turn of the 2010s, and how bleak it was looking towards Marvin Lewis coming back, and this revival, this renaissance that they were trying to build. He was about as good as they could have expected from that draft class, because they didn't have a chance to draft Cam Newton to pair with AJ Green. I think it was about as good as they could have expected. And unfortunately, it did go on longer than I think we would have wanted it to. But for a team that was always looking for a way to hold on to try to win, to have him there, I at the end of the day, you can kind of understand it. But I think,
he was a great second round pick, as you said. But for a quarterback, exceeding second round pick value isn't enough. And he was a great second round pick, but not a great quarterback.
No, and he never was.
And so he was just good enough where you're like, well, maybe a little more time, and like you said, he had that immediate success. But honestly, John, I attribute a large portion of his success to AJ Green, which is why his downfall came without AJ Green. Dalton has never been a, ineffective, like a guy who can't put any points on the board, except when he didn't have AJ Green, and he's had his ups and downs. And like you said, crucial moments and all that. But he never looked hopeless except without AJ Green. And from the beginning, when AJ Green and Dalton, when they were surprising everybody the rookie year and we went 9-7 and all that stuff, I knew the reason was AJ Green. He transcends, bad play calling. He transcends underthrown passes. He just makes it happen. And I don't want to get off topic, but this is why I really... I'm hesitant to trade AJ Green, because I want the next quarterback to have that luxury. And I think he takes good care of his body. He's still got that athleticism. If they can figure out the injury thing, I think he's got another 4 good years in him, perhaps.
But that whole situation, the whole persona with Green and his impact to the Bengals is partly why they were never able to transcend beyond the peak of what they were. And that was just a team that could do well in the regular season, but when it mattered the most, they just couldn't do it, because it's hard for a team to solely rely on the success of the entire team through a wide receiver. And, I think someone said that the Bengals did have a franchise quarterback, but he just played wide receiver. And you can see the overall impact of how, when AJ was on the field and when he was off the field, the differences in terms of overall success, in terms of the offense, it was staggering. And it's not something that you see with every offense. And that's partly why success was so hard to be sustained, specifically when Green went out.
You don't want to rely on AJ Green.
Exactly.
Okay.
You don't.
But John, when the Falcons had Kyle Shanahan, and Julio Jones. Do you remember Julio Jones in the Super Bowl? Do you remember his performance?
It was amazing.
So I know it's not likely that your best offensive player is going to be your wide receiver. That's not a good formula for success. But if you get the right, if Zach Taylor if he is actually a good player, it's so hard to know what he is right now, because all the mess around him and how young he is and how inexperienced he is. He could develop into a very good one. But if he has not AJ Green as the focal point of the offense necessarily, but as a guy in critical situations comes up with a big play.
Like the difference is, like, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with having AJ Green in your offense, right? The problem was if AJ Green doesn't play well, then the whole offense falls apart, right? And like it wasn't a problem for the Patriots to have Rob Gronkowski, and the differences between that offense with him and without him were obviously staggering, but the offense didn't live or die by Gronk. The offense does live and die by AJ Green. And to your point, that's what makes him so valuable. And that's why the Bengals are having a hard time letting him go and trading him away. But if you pair AJ obviously with a better quarterback who doesn't have to rely on him for success, then the offense becomes a whole nother thing entirely. Then you get the best of AJ Green, but also the best of the offense because it doesn't all fall onto his shoulders. So to that point, I would like to see AJ with another quarterback.
Yeah.
If that's with the Bengals or without the Bengals, to truly get a gauge of just how transcendent he is and how much more he can produce with a quarterback who basically is handicapped to him.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to see Finley with real weapons around him. He didn't have them in the preseason. I'd like to see what he could do. He didn't get to play at the first team offense with our skill guys. I'd like to see what he can do. And we know, I mean, his arm is pretty bad. I mean, it's in the lower kind of echelon of the league. No, I mean, it's beyond what, 15, 20 yards. It's about as bad as it gets. Right?
And it's not about accuracy. It's about velocity.
No. It's a week. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's why, if you're listening, Ryan Finley, please, my friend Jeff Blake has offered to help you. No, don't laugh, John. This was serious. We had a conversation on Twitter. I can share.
Really?
Yeah. He said he's going to help him if he wants. But, I mean, it costs money. But Jeff Blake will help you. He said the deep ball, he said this on our show, it is not a hard throw. It's a finesse throw. So anybody can do it, basically. Because Jeff Blake was actually a smaller guy. He was a smaller guy. I mean, he wasn't like he had these huge biceps. That's not why he could throw so deep. He knew he had the technique for throwing deep.
Yeah, it's mechanics, but it's hard to relearn mechanics when you're 25 years old, which is what Finley is, or he's going to be in December. So
you say 25. I don't know if you're saying that's young or 25, John. And this guy, hold on. This guy get a graduate degree?
You're not going to cut me off right here. You're not going to cut me off right here. 25 is all right. Imagine you're doing something for your entire life, right?
Okay.
It's literally the.
I'm older than 25, and I'm still learning how to do
it's the backbone of what you do to support yourself, right? And you've been able to get away with it for so long, and then you realize that it's just not good enough. And then
we added puppets, John. So I mean, the show was just going longest time.
Brian Finley can't add puppets to his mechanics. You know what I mean? It's the same thing with people are asking me, how can Billy Price get better? How can Bobby Hart get better? They can theoretically get better, but it's so hard to relearn something that's so attached to your DNA as a human. If you've been doing something the same way for, dozens of years, and that's just how you've been able to do it, and now you're forced to change. Not everybody can do that.
No, they can't. But what about that guy that Andy Dalton worked with? The former baseball guy.
Tom House.
Yeah,
it worked as well. It worked as well as it could have possibly, and it still wasn't enough.
Yeah, but he was better in certain situations throwing on the run. He improved in some areas. Remember, that was right before his 2015 breakout year.
But that's the whole thing, man. If you can improve enough to the point where you don't need another quarterback, then nobody would ever, they would just do that with every quarterback, and you wouldn't need to worry about investing in somebody better. Like, what Ryan Finley does this year should not impact how they address the quarterback position in 2020. They just cannot afford to. They cannot afford to sit on their hands and just say that we have Ryan Finley.
No, if there is a guy that they like in the top 3 or whatever, they believe in him, yeah, they take him. Absolutely. Even if Ryan Finley is lights out. I agree. But if their guy is not NFL ready and needs a year or two,
that's
then
fine.
Ryan Finley could be a huge asset.
And that I think is why they're letting this play out for 8 weeks.
Because Ryan Finley will do what they need Dalton to do. I mean, he has a lot of the skills of a veteran when it comes to the things about staying in the pocket and stepping up and making plays. So I mean, there's really nothing that Dalton offers that Ryan Finley doesn't at this point.
No. Besides age and I guess a better hairdo, Finley needs to work on.
I mean, there's some throws where Dalton still makes it's a nice throw. He makes a few, maybe a couple of games that probably Finley couldn't. But I mean, we're still going to lose the games. We put 10 points up, and that was one of his best games last game. We put 10 points up. Everybody's like, right, Dalton, what was it they said? They said, like, he didn't have any turnovers. Great! 10 points in 2019? I mean, come on, man. 10 points. I don't care if you don't throw interception. I don't care. You're the quarterback. It's you. You're like half the offense. 10 points,
No,
that's
he's
on
more
you.
than half.
Yeah.
He makes the entire offense. That's I think
Yeah.
what a lot of people just don't understand yet.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I know you like Dolgala. You know, I think Dolgala, he threw that moonshot over the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that? And
Mm-hmm.
then that was a few days ago, and then all of a sudden they benched Dalton. I don't know if there's a connection.
I don't believe in coincidences.
Yeah, I'm saying, yeah, Dalton could not throw that far. Yeah, so a lot to think about. I wonder if Dalton, if he's not traded, if he goes to the third string, so there's no pressure on Finley. I don't know.
He should be grateful that they didn't tell him in London because he might not have come back to the United States if he did. So
Yeah,
it's good for that.
yeah, or maybe he would just go back to his roots, maybe to Ireland or something. I don't know. You don't know what could. I think a lot of things could happen. All right. Well, that is our reaction. And John, I didn't see any trades happen. I'm kind of shocked. I think.
Oh,
there's
you're
10 minutes
expecting
left.
some trades?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just very curious about this Dalton thing, man, because I don't think they're going to do him dirty. So I feel like in some way he's going to be happy with this issue. I just have a feeling.
No, but like I thought we would all assume that he's the kind of guy that would gladly take up the clipboard and help the young guy. In this case, it just happens to be Finley, not the quarterback that they draft next year. Because at this point, yeah, like I just can't possibly see him coming back in any capacity for 2020 at this point.
Well, I know he'll help the guys. I imagine that, but I think he'll have a hard time coming to terms with it just by his body language, just like things he said over the years, and he was really hesitant to take, be held accountable or take responsibility a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comes from a place of knowing how much people are critiquing him and how much under the microscope he is and all that. And so, I don't know. I mean, I think he's going to take this rough unless he gets another opportunity.
Well, the opportunity could come in literally 10 minutes. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. I almost want to keep the stream going until the 10 minutes, but I guess we're going to have to do another video if something happened. All right. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm always on call, man. You know me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny that we did this when Hoji wasn't here, and he was pushing for Dalton. He was pushing him out the door since day one, really. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know what he's doing right now. He's probably.
I think we know what. I think we know what he's doing, and that's the reason why he's not on the show.
Yeah, exactly.
We have a PG rating to keep.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, yeah, Dalton, nice guy and all that. But let's stop.
Great human being. It's never personal.
Yeah, but this is a football team, folks. We're trying to win games. I don't feel bad for anybody. If you don't help my team win, you can take your paycheck, but sit down. We want to win games. That's all we care about. We are not Mike Brown. It's not about being nice to people. It's not about keeping things the same, keeping all the family together. No. If you're not performing, you're out. Sorry.
Well,
all right. That is all we have for this. Oh, by the way, I want to take our patrons on patreon.com. We have 3 of them now. $7 a month is what we're raking in. So on the one hand, people are being less patronizing. On the other, it's a bad sign for ratings and for the Bengals. Maybe Finley boost the ratings and boost our Patreon accounts. That is all we have for this episode. We will see you next time. So long. SVT. Bye.